Hi YouTube. Today I'm going to give a very scientific explanation for why spirits exist, why spiritual beings exist, why consciousness transcends the material universe. I'm going to give it to you within the realms of a evolutionary perspective or a Big Bang theory, within the bounds of how science explains creation and the creation of life forms. So at the beginning of time, there was a Big Bang. So science claims, which thrusted an immense number of particles out into empty space, which coagulated, accumulated together, and formed things like planets. So these particles, at the beginning of time, the hydrogen atoms, all of these particles do not know that they exist. And I want you guys to take a second to think about that, to understand exactly what I'm saying. The particles that were thrusted into space by the so-called Big Bang did not know they existed. As today, you have something like a pencil. The pencil and the atoms that make up the pencil do not know that they exist. They exist within a physical universe, but they have no consciousness. They do not know they exist. They have no idea that they exist in a physical universe. They don't know that they're being held by a person. The pencil doesn't know that it's being held by a person. It doesn't know that it's existing in a room. Likewise, with the particles at the beginning of time, they were thrusted mindlessly, and they don't know that they exist. Planet Earth, the matter of planet Earth does not know that it's a planet, doesn't know that it exists. And this is a very, very crucial topic to understand, because when we get into the development of life on planet Earth, we have an evolutionary line, right? An evolutionary progression. So at the beginning of this evolutionary progression, there are small amounts of, lipids or atoms and other things that coagulated, came together to form the first cell, and so on. So that's fine. At the first time when the first amino acids, for example, were forming, those atoms in the pools on Earth that were the first life pool, so they say, they did not know they existed. They did not know they were forming life. They did not know that they existed on Earth or anywhere. They're mindless. They're totally unconscious. They don't know that they exist. So the question that disproves that evolution produces conscious life forms is the following question. Where in the evolutionary progression does consciousness begin? Where in the evolutionary progression does the atoms, the matter that originally did not know they existed in a physical universe, did not know they exist at all, know that they now exist, know that they now exist within a physical universe, and know and can orient themselves in relation to other atoms and other dead objects in space? For example, a person knows that he is in a physical universe, knows that he is next to a table, knows that he is next to different objects in his environment, right? So at some point, there would have been some life form that changed from being mere matter to a life form. However, that jump is impossible, because the original atoms and the original cells that started creating life on this planet, the very first ones did not know they existed up into a very large point, until a large degree of complexity. And people can say, well, it's when the brain came into it. But even if the brain aligned and formulated into what it became, it would simply still be atoms working in cooperation in a robotic fashion. The human being, the human, would just be a robot. Those atoms that make up the brain, make up the nose, make up the eyes, they would function, sure, maybe, but they would not know that they existed, because atoms are atoms. Even if you can organize them in all kinds of complex ways, but if it is true that the atoms at the original start of the Big Bang that exploded, the actual atoms do not even know that they exist in a physical universe, do not even know that they exist next to other atoms or in space or anywhere. They do not know that they exist. It goes to say that no matter how you organize them, they might do things, they might function like robots, they might be able to move, but it's true that they would not know that they existed. They would not know that they existed in a physical universe. Their charges and their electric charges, they can cause them to align in certain ways naturally, which is what probably occurred in a lot of different parts in terms of creating cells and stuff like that at the beginning of time. But there was a jump that had to be made. and that jump cannot be explained within the bounds of science. Human beings and life forms today know that they exist in a physical universe. They know that they exist. They can orient themselves around other objects in space. But if they were just matter, matter by definition does not know that it exists. So if the human being is merely flesh, it's impossible, 100% by definition impossible, for them to know that, for a human flesh, to know that it exists within a physical universe or within a space or next to other objects. This plant here is a fake plant, but it doesn't know that it exists. The pot, for example, it doesn't know that it exists. It is sitting there without knowing that it's sitting there. And that's the point of where you can ask a science guy that is so firm on, they're so firm, most of them, that where you ask them, where on the evolutionary progression is it that consciousness was introduced? The vast majority will be shocked by this question because they would have never heard of such a question before, because they will say, well, it was a gradual process. However, no matter how gradual or how ungradual or how complex or uncomplex it is impossible for the atoms, no matter how they are aligned, to know that they exist. The atoms that thrusted out from the Big Bang in the beginning of time did not know that they existed. It's very simple. So this is just a very interesting concept for me. And when you ask a science guy, where was it on that evolutionary progression that consciousness existed? Well, that introduction of consciousness is the introduction of the spiritual being. And it's clear that in order to be conscious, in order to understand that you are in a physical universe, by definition, you cannot be a part of the physical universe. You cannot be matter, because matter by definition doesn't know that it exists. It doesn't know that it's existing around other things. This little planet here doesn't know that it exists. It just spins. It has no idea that it even represents a planet. It has no idea. So that's all I have. It's an interesting thing. Write down below in the comments what you think, and please write down any rebuttals. I'm very curious to hear and see what you guys think. Thank you.